political stuff for the last, from 18 till that time. I was also spokesperson for the BJP on economic issues for some time, and I do have I do keep meeting people on a personal basis, but not at all into active politics now.
Just one
In
second.
fact,
I'll mute all and open you first. And you are a co-host, so you can also, unmute yourself.
I think I'd
Yeah.
like to take this opportunity to thank Kumar for sort of getting to speak to an audience like this. I'm very honored, actually, saying it sincerely, because very often one speaks to audiences which are not, to put it very mildly, very conversant with economic or business issues, and very heterogeneous. And it's delightful that we have a set of people who are all stalwarts in their own line, and who are successes in the world of business. So because of that, what I would probably do is I'll confine my observations to about half an hour or so. And then there were some agenda questions which had been given. I'll try to address them. And then we can have for some time a freewheeling discussion on the topic that we have chosen today. If that's okay with you?
That's fine. Yes.
Yeah, I think the Union Budget 2022 is done, and now it's now been discussed, commented upon, and probably of the headlines. The budget itself is quite an interesting document historically. If you see the first budgets after India got free, they were taxation documents. The budget was where the government presented its, how much it spent and how much it earned in the year that's gone by, and asked for appropriations and approval to spend money and to tax people. So that is basically the finance bill, which is then passed by the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. If the Rajya Sabha doesn't pass it anyway, it becomes an act from 1st of April. However, over time in India, the budget has, I would say, acquired a larger than life dimension, in that it has become the statement, the single economic statement of the government, and has a lot of stuff which is more in the realm of, what shall I say, fantasy or dreams, or a little bit of politicking. And those things don't get really passed by Parliament. I remember the intention to increase the insurance cap was mentioned about 7 times in the budget, but there was no bill to, until recently, to increase it. So a lot of profound statements that come out. And so it's important to know what is the fact, and what's sort of planning or dreaming or wishful thinking, etc. In India, we have also got this animal called the Economic Survey, which comes a day earlier, which gives a lot of data. I mean, the good thing about it is a lot of information, very correctly done. But again, in Delhi, there's a saying, economic survey is written by economists in ivory towers, and budgets are presented by politicians looking at the elections the next 2 years. So there will be, if you see the economic survey prescribing about 10 different solutions and none of them being available on the budget, take it in your stride. It's meant for different audiences and so forth. So that's a little bit of background about the budget document and the economic survey. Now, coming to a little bit of detail about budget we had. What I did was I noted down some of the key announcements, and we'll talk very briefly about some of them, and also then talk about what's probably missing in the budget, which many opinion makers and people expected to find but didn't find. And then we'll go on to the agenda questions, and then is that okay?
Yes. Yes.
Now, the a big headline announcement we had in the budget, which sort of grabbed the headlines next morning papers also, was the sharp increase in capital expenditure of the union government. And the figure that was put out was 7.5 lakh crores, representing a 35% increase in the capital expenditure of the government. Now, that's of course a very important development because the idea is to not, to make India into a great economic power and improve the infrastructure, and things like that is something which everyone wants. So rightly so, this measure of the government received a lot of applause. But then there are always the cynics who look at the fine print, and ergo, there were analysts who then started saying, well, this is nice optically, but is it really so? And then leading this pack was, interestingly, the research wing of CRISIL, which is, of course, a highly respected organization. And of course, they were putting it in a nutshell. Some of the reservations, some of the macroeconomists have had about that figure. So I'll spend a couple of minutes about what they're saying about this capex of 35% increase and 7.5 crores. One of the comments CRISIL is making is that this amount also includes a 1 lakh crore loan given by the central government to the state governments for their capital expenditure. Now, normally in the past, this 1 lakh crore was not included as part of central capital expenditure. This went into transfers to states. But this time that money has been put here. And so what CRISIL is saying is that if that number were not there, the expenditure would come down to about 2.5%. The capex plan for 22-23 would amount to 2.5% of the GDP, which is exactly the same percent as it is in the revised estimates for 21-22. So they're saying that, so if you compare apples for apples, there's no increase in capital expenditure. They're also saying one more thing, which is a bit technical, but I'm sure an audience like this would follow. There's a number in the budget called the IEBR, the Internal and External Budget Resources. It's a number that the central government gives to central public sector undertakings like ONGC or SAIL for their capital expenditure. Now, that number that's not shown in this, but that's shown as a different budget head. There's been a very sharp decrease in that number to about 1.8% of the GDP from 3.3% of the GDP, which was the average of the previous 2 years. Now, government is explaining, saying that the central public sector companies have not been able to utilize more than 50% of the central allocations in their capex spending in the last 2 years. So there is such a backlog sitting with these CPSUs, they have decided not to give them more money, which means that if you totaled up IEBR and the central capex, actually the actual number is coming to be somewhat less than the revised estimates of 22-23. These are some of the finer details, but having said that, it's still a very good number. And if you're able to spend initially, and then it would be very good for the economy, but it's not as exciting as it sounded on the 1st of February. There are other couple of criticisms of this number, which is that some of it people would view as wasteful expenditure. The 8,000-10,000 crores you are spending on having 50 more small airports especially when the airports which have been created are running at huge losses and are not having any passengers. And then 6-laning expressways, which are 4 lanes. For example, the Ganga Expressway has the least density of traffic for any expressway in the world. So does it make sense to put more and more money into these type of things? Of course, these are all nitty-gritty arguments, though, and nobody can deny that highways have a great multiplier effect on development, especially the rural highways, etc. So this is a very large topic by itself, government's capex policy and actual spending. But I thought I'll highlight some of the talking points that people talk about when economists talk about when they talk on this subject. Moving forward, uh, there are some very good pieces out here. One of them is the huge investment for affordable housing. The government's planning to spend 48,000 crores more for affordable housing and create 68 lakh homes in the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana schemes for affordable housing in urban conglomerates. This is a very good thing. And so far, the track record of this government in affordable housing has been good. They have met most of their targets. So I would say this is a positive, and this will have a very good effect on the real estate sector. Though there are some dissonant voices which say that the affordable home definition should be increased. Right now, it's too small, and many houses are not getting covered under that. Government saying, okay, we'll look at it. But anyway, on a macro number, this allocation will surely be welcomed by everyone. Then we also have, I don't know how many of you know the nitty-gritty of this ECLGS scheme. This is a guarantee program, Emergency Credit Guarantee Loan Scheme, administered by the Government of India, where what government does is it gives guarantee support to banks and NBFCs to lend further money for MSMEs. Now, that is being expanded by 2 lakh crores and more for the micro segment. And another 50,000 crores is being allocated to ECLGS for the hospitality and tourism sector, which have been, as you all know, very badly affected. Now, this is something very good. I think this program, which ran last 2 years, have been very successful. A lot of money has moved from government, from banks to MSMEs. Now so I would welcome this as a continuation of a major initiative. Now, where's the criticism of this coming from? People are saying that if you looked at other economies which were affected by COVID, the governments of those countries made a direct transfer to the affected businesses. There is a direct cash transfer. Now, many people believe that is better and faster to put life into these MSMEs, because the MSME sector, which accounts for about 30% of our GDP, 60% of our exports, and the biggest employer after agriculture, is facing, very great crisis. Some would say, critics like Chidambaram would say that 60% of them are closed. I don't know how far it's true, but it clearly the pains are visible. So some of the people are saying that a direct transfer program might have been more effective, because what happens in this, again, according to MSME, and as it happens, I'm heading a committee on challenges faced by the MSMEs, the government committee. So, I'm getting to hear a lot of the criticism also. They're saying that what the banks have been doing is, when they've got that 20% extra, they're adjusting all the old repayments and default, and the money being actually given to the MSMEs is only 3 or 4%. So they're saying that the banks are quickly taking away all the money, and what's being left for paying salaries or buying raw materials is very little. I don't know. This is some of the reservations being put out by the All India MSME Association, but that's one side of the story. I wish the government had experimented with a little bit of direct transfers, like they're doing the welfare schemes, the Kisan scheme, where they're giving 6,000 crores a year and so on. That could have been attempted because digitalized, much of it is digitalized, and MSME registration is complete. So the pass-through could have been quite easy, but then government has increased the allocations to ECLGS, though there's not a cash transfer, there's a guarantee. This is a guarantee program. It's not a budgetary allocation, but it's a statement. Then coming to some other interesting stuff, there is a huge hike in investment or spending for water under the Jal Jeevan program. I think it's a very good thing. 60,000 crores is to be spent for providing tap water to people. And they're saying that about 3.8 crores of rural homes, domestic urban homes would benefit from that, 3.8 households, which if you translate, it becomes about 12 to 15 crore people, which is a phenomenal number. And I think it's a very basic amenity, and hopefully that will improve the quality of life. It's a very significant welfare measure and compares with the Swachh Bharat and other schemes in its magnitude. Then couple of interesting initiatives. One is the river linking project. I remember when I was very actively involved in the BJP government of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He had this great vision of linking rivers, and very often he would talk about it. But the thing was so daunting, the whole thing, the numbers were so huge. I think successive governments put them in the back burner. Now, what this government is saying is they are taking up one project immediately for implementation, the Ken Betwa project in northeast of India, Bihar and UP, that they're going to spend about 45,000 crores to link the Ken and Betwa rivers. So that's a first in major initiative for river linkages. They've also identified 5 different river linkage projects, Tapti, Narmada, Krishna, Godavari. And DPRs are being done for implementation over the next 5 years. I mean, the amount will be very huge, but this can have a transformational effect on the Indian economy and Indian society, because as you know, Northern Indian rivers are perennial, and you have periods, especially in August, September, October, November, when there are huge floods. And because they're Himalayan fed, and the South Indian rivers do pass through periods of very low water. And if you're somehow able to link it, I think the benefits would be tremendous. Having said that, ability of the states to sit together and share river waters has been quite a disaster. I think Tamil Nadu, where I come from, and Karnataka, where I'm now living, I've had a very horrible history of fighting over Kaveri waters, and I don't know how many of these will really be able to surmount political headwinds. One suggestion which had come at that time, the BJP, I don't know if it's come to the Prime Minister now, is to make rivers a national asset. Like national highways are a national asset. They go through Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, whatever, Chhattisgarh. They're a national asset. There are many national assets like this. So we could make rivers a national asset, and then that'll give the government a freedom to link rivers, allocate them, etc. Because something like that, in my view, would be required in case we really want to get serious about this river allocation. But I'm happy it finds a good mention and a good allocation in this budget. Then there are some interesting ideas on digital education. In fact, I think it was Mr. Yechuri who sarcastically remarked that the word digital comes 14 times in the budget and the word poor comes twice. So these are some interesting snippets we get when we go to these TV channels. Anyway, we are planning to, through the eVidya scheme, We are planning to push a lot of digital education into the primary schools and all that. And from just 12 channels, 200 TV channels are being planned to cover all the subjects from class 1 to class 12 for a supplementary education. And even if this implemented even 50%, I think it'll be a great development to provide good quality education at the lower levels, which is, of course, one of the prime needs of India right now. The lack of education and dropouts and girl children dropping out and so on. So this is, I thought, a good worth talking about. There's also talk about a digital university and so all that, but I'm putting that more like one of those statements. Telecom, there are some significant action points on telecom. The 5G is going to get rolled out. The spectrum auctions are coming. The money has been provided for sale of spectrum also. It'll come, and 5G is going to change the way computing is going to be done, high-speed computing, many things, genome, this, that, the social media, everything. 5G is going to be a great development. I think government's very keen on pushing this, and I think the spectrum pricing will be reasonable, and we could see some action. There is also this BharatNet. You remember that was a very controversial project. BharatNet is a project by which optic fiber is to be taken to optic fiber cables to every part of India, to every village. So a huge allocation has been made for optic fiber, and they're claiming that by 2025, every village in India would have optic fiber connectivity and they'll have internet. So big investment is being planned in BharatNet, and these are, I thought, two good announcements that came out in the budget. Some other announcements, defense. There's no great increase in allocation to defense, but it said that 68% of defense procurement in the coming year is going to be through local sources. That's a huge figure. I remember that was about 3-4 years ago, it was 30%. Then we got the PLI schemes and then an opening up of ordnance, many things. So 68% of defense, that's going to give a huge impetus to domestic manufacturing. And I think we are seeing a lot of momentum opening up of private sector to many parts of defense and many groups like L&T, Bajaj, Kalyanis, and many people have taken advantage of this, Mahindras. So that's something which is very positive. Then the railways are also planning 400 new generation Vande Mataram trains. So these are high-speed, light trains which are going to be running much faster than the present trains, about twice as fast on about almost all the important routes of India. So 400 trains to be produced and made operational in the next 3 years. And that would, I think, dramatically change the Indian railways. Here again, a caveat, a slight diversion. Last 3 years, we have abolished the railway budget, but the railway budget is now included in the regular budget. Now, some numbers of the railways, I thought I'll talk about. The railways, unfortunately, is, if railways were a company, it would have gone to NCLT. Let me say very simply, its operating ratio is 110% or something. That means it spends 110% of what it earns. And historically, it used to give some surplus into the general budget, but today it is drawing from the general budget last 4 or 5 years. And that's because there has not been any significant increase in railways earnings either through passenger or freight traffic. In fact, last 8 years, railways have never had a single double-digit increase in these two. In spite of that, the present budget is assuming an increase of 31% in passenger revenues and 14% in freight revenues. In spite of the fact that if you leave last year, which was a funny year, and there is a base effect, and The last 5 years, these two numbers have been less than 10%. So there is clearly an overambitious accounting. And I personally feel unless the government puts more resources to the railways, it will not be possible for them to implement this Vande Mataram program. But having said that, government may decide to put money into it because it will be a very popular program. But the railway finances are not at all in good shape. I could also talk more and more about it. Subject by itself, they were supposed to contribute, invest about 5,000 crores for railway safety every year last 3 years, but they've invested less than 1,000 crores for track improvement. So things like that are there. Obviously, railways are not doing that well as one would like them to, but we have this announced in the budget. So then I talked about education, skilling, I talked about river linkages. There are some very nice statements coming about urban capability building. The budgets keep saying that. One interesting fact is that the budget recognizes urbanization as something which is a fact of life. You know, it's a phenomenon that's happened the world over in the last, and there is movement of people from rural to area. Let's be honest, agriculture is not very profitable, and with so much of mechanization, you don't need so many people to produce the same farm production. So urbanization is a fact, and hitherto the tendency has been to think of it as something not so good. But I think emphatically this government is saying we like urbanization. We understand that urban infrastructure in this country requires a lot of improvement. And so they're talking about various steps. Right now, they're only high-level committees, etc. There's no great allocation, increase in allocation to urban spending. But there are some good statements coming here, and hopefully over years, like we had the Jinrum scheme for good buses. There are, of course, investments in metro and all that, which is in a way urban development. I think almost 20 Indian cities are getting metro, various stages of. So this is all happening, but I'm quite enthused by the fact the government is talking very positively about urban investment, investment in urban infrastructure. We cover telephone, we covered railways, highway network. Of course, they want to build 200 kilometers per year, which is a huge figure, and etc. Now, where are we? At 6:35. So, okay, now, what is it people wanted to see, but they didn't see, or they didn't see enough of? A few things, and then I will then talk for discussion or take these questions. One thing is the allocation to Manrega. You know, Manrega is a very important scheme for providing rural jobs. And we have seen, because of the pandemic, a huge reverse migration to rural areas. And according to government's own studies, about 2.2 crore people have moved, have moved but not come back to urban areas. So they are obviously putting more pressure on Manrega. But the allocation to Manrega this year is much less than the revised budget of last year. It is slightly more than the budget of last year, but the actual expenditure of last year, about 90,000 crores, is now only 76,000 crores. So people are saying this is very under provided. There's one criticism that's coming up. The other criticism that's coming up is there's no direct scheme for employment generation. Government is using old Keynesian economics of high infrastructure investment and things like that. But some people are saying that the situation is too serious not to try out more direct methods. One was, some people were talking about an urban scheme like Manrega in urban areas, cash transfers. Many such direct schemes were being thought of, because the problem is serious. If you look at you'll get a little bit technical on this. If you look at the labor participation rate, which is a number which is tracked by most economists, the labor participation rate is about 39 about 39 crores. Okay, that is India's employable population is about 82, 83 crores. But the labor which is participating in the economy is only 39 crores. So a lot of labor has not just out of the economy. If you assume people between the age of 25 and 55 are employable, then the labor participation rate in India is one of the lowest in the world. So this is something to worry. And the unemployment rate is 8.8%, which is very high, improving slightly with the opening up. And another disturbing factor is the quality of employment. If you take the organized and unorganized sector, there's been a lot of job losses in the organized sector, and a lot of temporary jobs have increased, which means that people don't get proper benefits, and they may be in and out, like delivery boys and things like that. So the quality of jobs is gone very bad. So these three parameters: low labor participation rate, high unemployment rate, and jobs moving from organized sector to unorganized sector. So many people are saying this. There should have been much more focus on employment in these times. And the other thing people are saying is the middle class hasn't got anything. And I do feel about that. I think I wrote about it in one of my columns about 2 months back. I think it would have been good to have done something for the middle class, because I think there are many reasons it would have been good. One is middle class has been hit very badly by two. One is inflation. The inflation has really gone and hit family budgets, that's for sure, especially the oil prices and food prices. So the spending has come down. Second also is that they've had a lot of job unemployment and job cuts. I mean, salary cuts. So the spending money. And if you did the middle class as a mixture of people and pensioners are getting quite a raw deal, because with consumer inflation at 6%, the 1-year bank interest rates is also 5.5%, 6%. So savings have not, it's not worthwhile to save. And the taxation on interest is 30%. So people were saying that middle class could have been given. That's also linked to the consumption story, because if you looked at government spending during COVID, a lot of money has been spent on welfare, direct transfers of 500 rupees per month and free food, etc. These come under the category of welfare. But then if you look at consumption numbers, any which way you look at it, consumption as part of the economy is under stress. So if you had put more money in the hands of the middle class, that would have gone to consumption, and that would have started a virtuous cycle in the economy. Consumption, boost in consumption would have boosted in private investment. Right now, what's happening is the public sector investment is very, very high comparatively, but private sector investment is really not keeping pace. There are many reasons for that. I mean, we are all private sector people. We all take these decisions in our budgets. We invest not because you reduce the taxes. That could be one consideration. But we invest if there is a clear line of vision about the demand for the product. Now, many people are not getting that line of sight on the demand in the economy, on the consumption demand in the economy. So private sector investment is lagging. So people are saying that if some direct impetus had been given for spending, then the consumption economy, and we would have kicked off a virtuous cycle. But this kind is arguing more of Keynesian economics, that our investment in infrastructure will surely create jobs, and will surely prime up the economy, will prime up spending, will prime up. I mean, this is an argument we can keep having, whether this better, some of the proponents of the infrastructure spending say we create assets Whereas if we give money into the hands of the people, but then the other people say people are much better at deciding how to spend money than governments, tax less and spend more. These we get into sort of these classic economic arguments. But there are people who say that this middle class not being given money to spend and consumption not being given any incentives are detrimental to the economy. Then there is a slightly technical, let's say, criticism of this budget is that the high level of government borrowing. The government borrowing is very high. On a gross basis, it's more than 15 lakh crores. And on a net basis after repayments is 12.5 crores, which is very high. And immediately the bond markets, as you see, the yields picked up. And RBI has had a problem even selling its bonds to banks and insurance companies. So and this is big, and the fisc is high. The fisc, many people are again saying that, of course, we gave up the fiscal management goals and all that, COVID came. But after such a good growth of more than 8%, we could have brought the fisc down. Today, we are anticipating, this time the fiscal deficit was 6.9 actual. Next year, it's going to be 6.4 or 5. So that's very high, and that's going to be inflationary. And the borrowing is going to be inflationary. So, and also the budgets, assuming that the oil prices will not stay at this level, will come down. So this is a big if. So people are worried whether this budget will trigger inflation, in the days to come. And RBI is also following a fairly benign, even the last monetary policy, most people expected an increase in the reverse repo. It didn't happen. RBI is continuing its accommodative stance. So some of the economists are worried that are we entering an inflationary spiral driven by government borrowings? So see, these are some of the takeaways. I would say, all in all, it's a sincere effort by the government to kickstart the economy, which has been ravaged by COVID, and maintain high growth. Very good expenditure plans are there. There's no doubt about it. I think every paisa that's being spent is to be usefully spent in creating assets or building better infrastructure. But the arguments, again, criticism is coming that the direction of the government spending is not where it should be. It should have gone more towards consumption, middle class, healthcare, etc. So these arguments go on. There is no final answer. So I hope I've given you a bit of a tour de force of the budget, its highlights, pros and cons. And thank you very much for listening so patiently on a Sunday evening.
Yeah.
And what shall we do? Shall we have a discussion?
Yeah, so Vijay, what I'll do is, hello, I have to mute all, somebody is opened it, yeah. I'll just quickly summarize some of the comments which have come on the chat box. And if those people want to come and further supplement, that's fine. But otherwise, whosoever want to go and put up your hand in the this one in the panel, and I will know who has raised his hands first and go accordingly. Before we go there, I have a personal comment. Since you say that you are also advising the government and MSME are chairing, I had two suggestions for MSMEs. I think they are reeling under this government procedures too much. In fact, I was speaking to Mr. Mr. Vijay Sardana just about an hour back only. He advised the government on this agri for farm laws, this one and all. He knows you, perhaps you also know him, perhaps.
Yes, I do.
Supposing I say for MSMEs, or you don't have to go all the way, at least 10 crores or 20 crores. Like, in some other countries, you tell them whatever is your GST turnover, you pay 2% of it as income tax, and that's it. No records to be maintained, no filing of returns, no ITO for you, nothing. Just pay the 2% of GST, the presumed taxation, that's it. And slowly, if it works, I think it can increase to 100 crores or something. And so that they are rid of all these worries and ITO notices and compliance, audit, tax audit, all this nonsense. That's number one. Sure. Number two, at least the MSMEs I've seen, they waste a lot of time in labor laws administration with respect to PF, superannuation, leave encashment, gratuity, ELSI, etc. Here, I would like to recommend something on the lines of NPS, National Pension Scheme. You say let all the employee pick up a code which will stay from his first day to the last date of retirement, and let him choose whosoever advisor he wants. And like in NPS, authorize a few of them like HDFC, SBI, etc. The employer will only transfer at the end of each month whatever is the due amount under various heads to these entities to the credit of that employee's code account, and there their responsibility stops. No more communication with anybody else, and managing funds or giving it to the PF authorities, and nothing of that kind. He is washing off his hands, and that will save a lot of botheration, inspection, and an inspection report appearing, and very worry of having to comply with all this. That will go into the private hands, and you let the private hands invest only in the government security. You prescribe a pattern so that the government is not losing any revenue for its fiscal management. So it will divest a lot of worries for the this one is my
I know simplification, because most MSMEs, you are right, Kumar, most MSMEs are owner does everything.
yeah
The taxation, this thing, and all these worries about labor, factory, they take away from his core business of producing and marketing.
yeah
So some of these are made system driven. These
yeah
are some of the suggestions, and I'll tell you some of the other things that came out when it's a different subject. I think I'll just stop with this comment that the increasing price of raw materials, they're very worried about the price of steel and the price of plastic, the price of chemicals. These have all gone through the roof, and they are feeling that they just cannot maintain their profitability, and they need some succor in this the price of raw materials. The second is banking. They're saying that they must have more freedom in shifting banks. Quite often they get stuck with a bank which doesn't allow them, and it's impossible for them to shift a bank or even open an account with a bank. So they're saying this is all senseless. Sometimes the bank where they don't even understand our problems, and there is another bank who likes to support us, but they're not. So many such problems are coming up, but these need attention because they are such a significant part of an economy. Imagine the second biggest employer after agriculture, contributing 30% of the GDP, more than 50% of your exports. If that is, then how can the economy function smoothly?
Yeah. I'll just read out the comments on the panel. First is one
please.
AK. Sir, I attended your investment session at the Coimbatore Stock Exchange when you were advisor to Infosys and Balram Purchini.
Oh God, that was many years ago. Oh yes.
Nice to have attended today's session. There is one Ganesh. Direct transfers in US and Canada was riddled with misappropriation, and Mr. Ramachandran also says the same thing. Even in Germany, the experience of transfers were not sustainable. Okay. So would you have a quick comment on it?
Well, the first one, of course, I remember that lovely day spent in the Coimbatore Stock Exchange. Nice to reconnect with him. On direct transfers, I'm not an expert, to be frank. I think it worked in the US. That's what I was reading. It worked in the US, but I don't know the experience in Canada and Germany. Yeah. But the fact is, there is a criticism that routing it through banks gives the banks the first take of the money. Okay. And it is a fact that what's net coming to the MSME is okay. After all adjustments. Okay. And that's a fact. I mean, that's a, but maybe he's right. Probably I'll go a bit more deep into it. Yeah.
Was the defense procurement target met in the previous years?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, procurement targets were met. I think the indigenization targets were not met.
Okay, that's good.
In budget the indigenization targets were not met. Yeah.
In budget presentation, they never submit as how much revenue earned and how much utilized as regards expenditure. Balaji, it is there in the supplemental document I will give you. Yeah. Most of the time, Nirbhaya funds are not used by the government, which is true. Mr. Chidambaram used to say that out of 100 rupees allocated, only 25 reaching the people. I think the ratio is far better now, right?
I think so. I think so. It's very difficult because you have state governments and central government. But I think over the years, action taken reports and this thing, scrutiny by public accounts committees, etc., the utilization is improved. I think that statement was made by Rajiv Gandhi, if I remember right.
Yeah, in 1985, he had made that.
Yes. No, things have, I think digitalization and direct transfers, for example, many of the government schemes are now, especially say the ration system, governments claim about 35,000 crores have been saved through digitalization and direct bank transfers. These have systemic improvements are there. They're rather for everybody to see.
Okay. Then Mr. Appaya comments, direct transfers to MSMEs probably would have been used for consumption, particularly during pandemic. So guarantee scheme seems to be more sensible. Mr. Appaya, any supplementary? Okay, let's move on.
Actually, as a banker, I thought this was the way, because if I'm going to give it to particularly during pandemic, they were also badly hit. Any money given to them obviously would have gone for consumption. So I think it makes sense. That was my point. That's all.
That's very good. Mr. Appaya used to serve your bank also, SBI, and he retired as the MD of their.
SBI were the pioneers in MSME lending.
Yeah, you are in State Bank, is it? Good to know that.
I was Madras Circle, 72 to 78.
Okay, 72. I am 78.
Okay, junior.
Mr. Balaji also comments on the corruption, and Mr. Ramchandran also says much of the money goes to TASMAC in Tamil Nadu, and there is one privatization target are disappointing. Is it due to political pressure? That's a good question.
No, I don't think so. This I happen to know a bit about this. Privatization of Indian public sector is very, very tough. It's extremely tough. I think there are many, many issues which are coming up. They own land. For example, Concor, which is due for privatization, has got these very complicated agreements with railways on, on use of land, and many unwinding has to be done. BPCL has many complicated arrangements with ONGC. So I know the people who are working, they're very sincere people. There are no great political opposition at all to privatization, I can tell you. I'm surprised at the lack of opposition, actually, but it's not because of anything. I think, and I'm happy this year, they have been more modest. They have put only 60,000 crores. Last time they did 2 lakh crores.
Okay. So, and healthcare, this one, I think this is the gets a priority. Mr. Rajappa, are you there?
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, you can come on the screen, Rajappa. Yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone.
He used to be the head of Redef and used to head their Sri Lankan operations. After that, he worked for BJP also for a long time.
Oh, really?
Campaign.
What, you were head of retail operation of SBI?
No. I was with Rediffusion, the advertising company, for about 2 decades.
Okay.
Who used to have this intimate relationship with Congress.
Yes, I think Redif handled the Congress account for a long time, no?
Yeah, that was at the time when Mr. Nanda used to be a personal friend of Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. But then interestingly, I think later, from 2010 till 2012, I had the privilege of working with Mr. Jaitley. But that was really to do a lot of other work. I mean, he knew very well that Redif had to be in an earlier part, but he said, look, I mean, I don't care. Because
he loved ideas from anybody. He loved, I think he was one of the most open-minded persons. And I remember going out for a cup of coffee with him and Rajiv Shukla when we talked only about cricket. I mean, that type of bonhomie is missing in Indian politics these days.
Absolutely. I think he was a stalwart, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, first, let me thank Kumar for organizing this lovely session. I think it's a real, interesting session that you really took on, Vijay. I think it was a very fair appraisal of the budget. But I think the contentious part is really which side do you tilt? I mean, are you looking at this as a great budget or a bad budget or an indifferent one?
Well,
I think that's one of the issues
okay.
that I think Kumar put out in his.
Well, I'd say it's not a bad budget. I'd first of all say it's not a bad budget. And anybody who says it's a bad budget, I think, is not being fair to the budget. What prevents me from saying it's a very good budget is I would have liked, because I'm a very free thinking, free market guy. I don't know whether my days in Citibank or whatever. I believe in the power of markets. Okay. And I'm very westernized in my thinking of consumption as a driver of an economy. You know, and I've got this cynical view about Keynesian economics of giving so much money to the babus to spend, you know, that is that whole tax and spend versus, you know, even BJP has changed. You know, the old manifestos we used to keep on saying the government does not have to be in business and etc. But having said that, what I'd like to see, and it wouldn't have cost much, Rajappa, if you had, for example, this 2.5 lakhs to 5 lakhs, you know, 20 to 25,000 rupees per month salary for a family of 4 people. I mean, how can anybody live on that? And expecting somebody to pay tax on that. I'd have loved it if the minimum had been made to 5 lakhs, 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs, 10%, 10 to 25, 20%, about 25, 30%. And this differential between highest personal tax rate, which is 45, 46%, and corporate tax rate, which is 25%, nowhere in the world it exists. Nowhere in the world. And so some of these things, and that would have the low-hanging fruit. It would have cost the exchequer only about 15, 20,000 crores. I'm telling you. We could have given that. Why my friends in the BJP are saying, no, next year is total middle class budget. You can take it from me beginning to end because elections are coming into. Okay, I hope so. I feel something more could have been done for consumption, middle class, and for pensioners. You know, that ATC of 1.5 lakhs. What, 2014, say? What is 1.5 lakhs? It's nothing. You could have increased it to, after all, it's saving, it's going back to PF or it's going back into savings. You know, considering India, there is no social security as such. You know, so some of these things, I thought the government could have given more attention. But having said that, whenever they want to build better roads, when they want to build terminals in ports, whenever they want to do things like that, I'm very happy because, you know, you're creating assets, and at the end of the day, we're all happy our airports are better. We are happy that our highways are better. But the direction of spending, I think, I'd have preferred.
No, I agree. I mean, from whatever insight you've really given, I know which side you're tilting towards. And I totally agree with you on that, because I think it's a good idea to actually put money in the hands of people and let the consumption drive economy. Because if you look at the current situation, I think it has a lot to do with the issues in terms of demand itself. While I think if you're looking at private companies and the capex coming from there, it'll only come if they see
the
capacity.
Chat, I just said, what can tempt private sector to? I think Kumar is the best person to answer that.
So I mean, if there is no
Kumar,
demand
what will make you increase your capex?
and excess capacity, I think that is one of the issues which is really holding us back.
Actually,
so I think we are all pretty bullish on the India case right now. But I think there are some minor tweaking. I think also I quite agree with, you know, the points that Kumar made initially about the MSME, because there are lots of issues. I don't know whether you missed the recent thing by that ORF about the number of criminal liabilities that can happen because of
I know 1450 or something.
Crazy, right? I mean, absolutely crazy. So these are things which, if addressed, I think can make a world of a difference.
Okay, a couple of things.
I think government is claiming that they have removed some 1400 laws, and there is some move towards decriminalization. Companies Act, a lot of good work has been done. But you're right, labor laws, factory laws, pollution laws, many of those are highly criminal type of things.
Yeah.
Couple of comments, Mr. Vijay. In fact, I worked with Dr. Mohapatra, DPIIT secretary, through FICCI very closely for nearly 2 years. And I signaled it to them, the companies have to comply with something like 58,000, things in a year. And he was very kind, worked with the PMO, and recently they had put up a pro forma which reduces it by nearly 25,000 compliances. I mean, not everybody compliances. For example, my company has about 2,000 compliances issues. I'm sure it will come down, but if you look at the comparative numbers between Thailand, Malaysia, etc., it is less than 45% of the total number of compliances. Government is very conscious of it and they are working on it. I must say, the kind of reception they give, the kind of audience they give is fantastic. Nothing short of this one. In fact, I would like many of these call center companies who take your call are as receptive as the government has been on this issue. And the new gentleman who has come in also is equally very, very receptive to these ideas, and he is also working on it. Mr. Rajiv Gupta, the current DPIIT, this one. Regarding this consumption and investment, I think people's confidence will have to revive first before they will start consuming. Otherwise, everything that the government puts only will go into the bank account and sit there. So I think it is in that context, maybe I like Keynes, because investment is out of the purview of the consumers. Consumers lack confidence to spend now. Even if you give them money, maybe they will revive.
I think you have hit. I mean, Kumar, you have talked about the third side of the triangle.
Yeah.
In the US, for example, the stock market, they track three things mainly: employment, consumption, and consumer confidence. Because consumer confidence, even if you put money in the hands, as you rightly say, it'll go towards saving and not. Consumer confidence is driven by your perception that your income will be steady or grow in the next 12 to 18 months.
True.
Now, that is where it all starts.
True.
So you're right. Consumer confidence, RBI puts out that figure every quarter.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good, unfortunately.
True. And as far as investment is concerned, the general utilization rate in the economy is about 71, 72%. And nobody is which includes some people who are at 100%, 90%, etc., who are inclined to invest. But by and large, the majority is less than 70% category. And I don't think they are going to be investing. And I think leaving it to the private sector to increase the investment also would have been disastrous. I think it is better that the government spends at least for the next 12 months, 18 months is my opinion. But let me move on to other comments. Mr. Manivannan, I think, is there on the screen already. He is he is an expert on healthcare issues. In fact, he consults the Niti Aayog also, I think, has consulted him. AIMS, he has been conducting some programs. He's also running a course on ISB for healthcare issues. Mani, you can go ahead and raise your issue quickly.
Yeah, maybe it's more of appealing to Mr. Vijay, to use a good contact. Unfortunately, healthcare sector has been led down this time, despite the importance that was given. I know a lot of money has gone into managing COVID and the sudden jump in the production of some of the equipments and vaccines, but overall it is still about 1.8% and less, and we should touch at least about 2.5. That is number one. Number two, we were supposed to come up with a large chain of primary healthcare centers, which is supposed to stabilize the basic healthcare. The original plan was very good, but for some reason, both the fund allocation and the utilization is set to take off. And number three, the crucial aspect of medical devices. About 50,000 crores is the value of the medical devices, and 80 to 85% depend on imports. So we should have kicked up the Atmanirbhar in a big way, so that our dependence on especially China, out of 85% of the imports, you can say 60 to 70%, even I say 70% will depend on China directly or indirectly. Even if I'm importing from a non-Chinese company and country, indirectly some of the materials are coming from China. So that is one aspect where the medical devices companies have been led on. The other one is there are MSMEs in healthcare, typically about less than 100 bed, 70 bed, 50 bed hospitals, which are more in the T3 and even T4. And we were expecting some kind of a support in terms of some investment holidays or tax holidays for some time. Declaring healthcare as an industry which is still yet to go on. There seems to be more focus and attention on the large healthcare chains, but Again, 70%, 60 to 70% from healthcare is coming from small and fragmented segments which need a lot of support. And these are the areas where we've really been not getting the support. And again, GST is a major contention which is going on. In fact, I represented with Mr. Arun Jaitley. For want of time, we couldn't continue. A small technical adjustment would have helped healthcare to claim the input credit of the capital goods and other services which are coming into healthcare, which about 30% or 40% of my expenditure is from all those segments. So again, 78% of the cost of healthcare could be definitely fine-tuned. So this is one area where we are still appealing to the government to look at the input tax of the GST. At least those who are supplying to healthcare can have some kind of an arrangement. So these are all the points. Health insurance, which is still at a low penetration level compared to other countries, we are paying 18% GST on that. So I'm sure with Ayushman Bharat really supporting it some way, these are all the adjustments which could have definitely triggered some kind of growth. Because healthcare, according to Indian Brand Equity Fund, is about in the top 5 or 6 spots in terms of employment generation also.
Good, Mani. Any comments?
Can you put these things and give it to me as a note? I'll send
my
it to
pleasure, sir. My pleasure.
some senior people and this government on a personal basis. I think it's obvious you're such a practitioner. You're reeling off practical issues which can be actionable.
Yeah.
I'll surely send it to the right.
It's my pleasure. I'll definitely do.
Thank you.
Rest assured, all I am strictly going by the sequencing only. And next is Mr. Shravan Kumar, who has put some comment in the chat box. Shravan, would you like to? He's L&T Power's Director of Finance. Shravan, would you like to come and raise your queries?
Yeah, Kumar, just a small correction. I'm not Director of Finance. Just a step below that.
Okay.
Just for record. See, I think as Mr. Vijay has said, definitely this is not a bad budget. I think given the circumstances, I think there was no option but to drive the economic growth, prime the pump through government spending. I think so. If it is a virtue, it is a virtue. But I also echo his sentiment that there should have been some impetus to even create consumption demand. We are betting only on one side of the thing. And in terms of whether this spend will actually translate into ground level reality, I think there are many policy related issues in the infra sector which needs to be addressed. Otherwise, the budget allocations are not going to translate into actual spend with any quick efficiency. For example, still the dispute resolution mechanisms, PPP model, all these things are not really working the way they should. So sometimes companies like us also don't feel like quoting for even for a big job because the commercials are not good, or the tender has conditions which we think will lead us into some difficulties, etc. I think that's one point I just wanted to put.
Is there a framework, they call this Gati something infra thing, to look at the specific bottlenecks in project implementation? Is that working? Because government is trying to get different ministries to talk and iron out these issues.
Sir, it will take some time for the impact to be seen. This is a fairly recent announcement in that sense. But in terms of idea, it is fantastic because one of the reasons why projects suffer is because of lack of coordination. Sometimes the projects are launched without tying up even land acquisition fully, and just as a major example.
I wish it works because it can do wonders.
Absolutely.
I mean, thinking of the private sector, if we are implementing a project, every business head will come in Monday morning and sit with the CEO.
Absolutely, sir.
I mean, that's how we function.
Absolutely.
These
just
chaps
like
work in silos, they work in silos most of the time, sending notes to each other.
Shravan, you have made one more comment. People say there is some mystery in assuming lower revenue budgets next budgets. Any comments, Mr. Vijay?
Sorry, what was this meant? Yeah.
People say there is some mystery in assuming lower revenue targets for the next year. Any comments?
Yeah, they've said that. I don't know. I mean, I think they have been quite conservative in the budget numbers. There could have been massaging, could have been done.
Yeah.
And they've just shown the fisc as 6.4%. They said, okay, this year, all the governments all over the world are giving, saying goodbye to fiscal prudence. So we also will not try to tighten up. And many economists were saying this is the wrong time to tighten up. So I think more prudence. And FM has also been claiming credit for it, that all her numbers are hard numbers. And they're very capable of realization, which is probably true. Except the railways. Railways, I don't agree at all. Railway numbers, I don't agree.
Yeah, VSR, you can go next.
Thank you, Kumar. A couple of questions, Mr. Vijay. First thing is the efficacy of the whole budgeting mechanism being reviewed at all? I mean, year after year, this kind of a drama goes on, you know. So somebody comes at present, somebody makes a comment, and then, you know, life goes on. Whether the budget, how efficiently that approach has worked, whether we are able to really find out the mechanism. Is there any such mechanism available?
No, there is
currently?
no ongoing mechanism, you know. There is no ongoing mechanism for budget spending. So, and normally they are back-ended. Mostly if you see, the budget spending is back-ended. There are only regular meetings of various user ministries, and but there is nothing like an external, something like a PAC or something to actually see the efficiency of the implementation of various proposals in the budget. That's quite a shortcoming, actually.
Yeah.
In the private sector, we are doing it all the time, quarterly
Very
reviews.
true.
Yeah.
Another thing is, you know, this government also talked about this asset monetization and all that. Is that kicking in any revenue in this budget, or that is
No.
going as
I
a
think
separate
that's,
stream?
I wrote about it also. If railways decide to sell the surplus land, they'll get more than 2 lakh crores. If army could give up even 5% of the surplus land in major cities, you know, we don't need to pay income tax at all. But you know, it's a low-hanging fruit, yeah. You know, instead of some big ticket privatization, you could. I don't know why they don't. Lot of vested interests, I feel. Seriously.
Hey, thanks, Kumar. Just quick one. I don't know it is in the right context for today's meeting agenda, but because during Q&A I heard these laws and all, I'm curious to understand whether some light can be thrown. It takes a lot of time for you know, fixing accountability with regard to economic offenses. But as we talk about, you know, also making stringent laws, is it the implementation and all those things of the stringent laws, or these laws are being addressed to correct loopholes probably in the system? I don't know. No, I don't know whether it's in the right context, but that was my question I had.
In fact, he heads the auto components business of a Chinese company here, and he has been at it for, I mean, with Ford and Visteon, and now this company for the last 20 years now. And
some of these laws are pretty draconian, you know. I'm telling you, some of these economic laws like Prevention of Money Laundering Act, economic, I mean, they're very, very strong and one-sided. You know, but there's no debate on these things, actually. There's debate on things like sedition law and all that, but there's no debate on, you know, these types of, and many people are wrestling with these types of situations. You know?
Okay.
And arrests are made, you know, and there is no charge sheet filed for months and months, and it's all not good.
Mr. Naren, are you there? What would nudge the private companies to increase their capex? From what I can understand, even infrastructure companies, cement, steel, etc., haven't really increased their capex despite increase in spending. Mr. Naren, are you there?
Yeah, Kumar, I'm here. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Vijay, that is one question. The second question is more related to the Atmanirbhar idea and concept. So, I'll give you an example of what happened, and then you can probably say if there's some change happening. So, there's a company, small company in Bangalore, which makes night vision goggles, and the Indian Army got to know about it when they were doing a joint exercise with the US Army. and they got to know that there's a company in Bangalore from which US Army buys these goggles. And I believe the Indian Army then approached these guys and all that, and the deal couldn't go through because of various, I don't know, for lack of better word, terms and conditions being put forward by our guys in terms of fulfilling the contract. So again, Indian Army went back to whoever they were buying from outside India to buy it. Now I've heard a couple of such instances from in the healthcare industry also, where an Indian company was probably about half the price of where they were importing, but for whatever reason couldn't get through. So the question is, is the government cognizant of such issues, and is there something being done where the field is kind of being made level for Indian companies to kind of get into these sectors?
Yeah, I've heard of these situations which are preventing localization, but I don't know if the government's really applying its mind on this. What are the obstacles to Atmanirbhar? I don't know.
Yeah. Mr. Balaji makes a comment that PTR, that is the Finance Minister of Tamil Nadu, told that the budget is good at macro level. So, Balaji, would you want to comment on it? Hello, you are on mute. You have to unmute yourself. Hello?
Unmute Balaji.
Kumar, why don't you unmute him?
Okay. No, I have to ask only to unmute. I can't unmute him.
He keeps talking.
He's continuing to speak, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'll go to the next one. Mr. Appaya wishes that you become FM soon, so that a pensioner like him would be very happy. Yeah.
I don't think I'll be such a taskmaster every week. I'll call for a meeting and say, "Kitna kharch ho gaya, kitna paisa aa gaya."
You'll have tough competition from Mr. Subramanian Swamy also.
Balaji, you have to unmute yourself. We are not able to hear you. And then Mr. Ganesh to everyone.
Accountability is not there, boss. Accountability is key to everything.
True.
In any business plan, any expenditure, unless we have ruthless accountability for performance,
Ganesh says, do we have HR? Am I interrupting you? Sorry, you continue.
No. I'm just saying that for these types of huge numbers in lakhs of crores to become actual, every stage they account. I'll tell you an example. When I was director of ITPO, Pragati Maidan
I did it now.
Yeah, just one minute.
Very prestigious project because PM wanted the G20 summit because it got postponed due to COVID. The type of accountability was just amazing. Every 15 days, the file will go to Mr. Narendra Modi and he'll pull up whoever it was. I think NBCC was the prime contractor. It was a multinodal project. Delhi government is involved. The Delhi chief secretary. I mean, it was amazing. So when the government wants to do it, they can do it. When they want to get everything, the act together. And how many clearances was given? Police clearance, this thing, clearance, environment, all done at the stroke of a pen. But then that type of thing is not there for every project. That's a problem. Yes, Mr. Balaji, you were saying something?
In PTR, that in Pudhiya Thalamara, he answered very cautiously. Budget is not an easy subject. They are handling it well, but macro level they are doing, but they are not doing anything for the poor, as if we supporting Stalin. That is one. Second is, I mentioned in my comment also, why do the central government have a right to keep on delaying the GST allocation of the state in indefinite period of time, or they are telling lies?
They're supposed to, constitutionally, they're supposed to transfer.
But
this is
PTR
just
is telling 11,800 crore is spending.
No, you're supposed to, you're just collecting agency, you're supposed to transfer it. There are very clear laws on how much it should go to the states. I think that's not correct. That's not correct.
Hey, Balaji, I have known that quite often the documents which are required to be submitted by states, they don't submit it at all. Okay, it on delay, and not that central government is lily white. They also have their own bureaucracy to sail through. I would only say that over a period of time, things have improved.
But Mr. B and Vijay, even though you are also Karnataka, don't mistake me. Irrespective of all the MPs, except central minister may not be corrupt, but all the local government also fully corrupt, right from the ward level to municipality level. Is there anything BJP doing? I'm also Bangalore.
I'm not defending these chats, please. I used to defend, not anymore.
Okay. And Ganesh to everyone, do we have HR companies who process payroll and many compliance requirements of MSMEs? They are trying to get a foothold in major companies only now, but it is not effective in that sense. And I don't think law allows delegation of this responsibility to a third party. And then iPad, that must be Varadhan. That must be Sampath Anand. Please find out from Mr. Vijay as the reason for reducing fund allocation to MGNREGA. Would you like to have a quick comment?
What is that? Explain the question to me.
Why reduction in ME and NREGA this year?
I know that's only one government spokesman answered that. He said this thing was a extraordinary situation. 21-22, we had the worst wave 2, etc. And we are expecting that the demand for this will come down as agriculture picks up and as people come back from the villages. So and then they are quick to add that if revised estimate we need more money, we will give it. But clearly, it's working on the assumption that the rural distress will reduce considerably. That's the assumption government is making.
Sorry to bother, sorry to disturb you, sorry to interrupt. What I am trying to say, in that Mandrega also, I believe this building allocation, what they are 68,000 something flats, what they are going to build everything, that people also they are using a Mandrega fund with the result. Whatever the short allocation, it is coming through that one. That's what somebody mentioned.
Okay, probably.
Mr. Vijay Sardana, any question?
Sir, nothing much, but nice to hear Vijayji. We used to interact on TV channels on various economic issues.
Okay.
But sir, one thing which is very important when we are talking about MSME, around the world, the future growth is on innovations and research based, because we are talking of digitization, we are talking about a lot of disruption technologies which are emerging. And somewhere we are finding that there is no hand-holding or any support to link these small scale industries or MSMEs with research organizations. If you look at China, every MSME has mandatorily must have a registration with some R&D center or university, so that in their area of operation, if there's any new research happens in the university like IIT or any agency, they compulsorily share with them in case MSME wants to adopt or learn or go through training or whatever based on their market requirements. There is no such mechanism in India. And the way things are changing, we see a lot of startups. My concern is that on one hand, the large companies have resources to do in-house whatever they want to do. On the other side, startups have a lot of private equity. They can buy, acquire technologies. And MSME, because of family-oriented and very often old mindset, they will be squeezed between the two. Neither they have funds nor knowledge. And they are actually holding the market, but with outdated concepts and technologies and products. What is your thought and what should be done with policymakers to change this ground reality? Otherwise, I don't see a future for MSME in the current way they are operating, because they are either too resistant for change or they are too possessive for their assets, and they don't have, I will say that, good business practices in place to become transparent and open to the new challenges. Because
I'd say, I think you're bang on in identifying the problem. I think lack of technology and lack of skills among the MSMEs is a very, very big issue for them. In fact, the committee I'm heading, there is a very senior person from a public sector undertaking, and he was saying that they are mandated to procure 30% from MSMEs. And it's such a problem for him because the skill levels in these MSMEs is so low, even for them to, and now they've come to such a stage, they are giving the designs, they are doing the product development for them. I think we have to give a lot of attention whether we can have institutions created for skilling for these people. I don't think it's a mindset problem, Vijay. It's not a mindset. The MSMEs also know they lack knowledge, but they, in their scheme of things, they're just not able to manage the various problems they have and give attention to skilling, redevelopment, tooling, digitalization. So some solid external support is required in this. Otherwise, you're right, MSMEs will get totally marginalized.
The last two questions, one from Mr. Tirumurthy and the next Mr. Shravan Kumar. And with
Tirumurthy is there.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
Here.
He has changed his name to Anita.
வணக்கம் மகரிஷி.
என்ன எப்படி இருக்கீங்க?
நல்லா இருக்கேன் சார். You are supposed to be the Minister of State for Finance under Arun Jaitley. Because of your equations, you dropped out, I think, if the rumor is right.
Okay.
Just a few. Have you fully distanced yourself from BJP?
Hey, Thiru, we will hold this question. We will personally discuss.
Okay. And going away from this budget, some small reference to your Delhi Ramana Kendra and your discourse for a minute. When it is usually scheduled, if at all you would like to answer.
Listen, now after I moved to Bangalore, I'm really missing that. I used to really do this Bhagavad Gita discourse every week in Ramana. I did it for almost 10 years, I think. But Nirtita sir, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm doing my own spiritual pursuits. But Bangalore, I have not started any lectures yet. Thank you.
Okay,
all your economic articles have been very useful, sir. Please keep it up.
Thank you.
Sometimes it is practical and sometimes it is impractical. Please keep working, keep writing.
Mr. Shravan Kumar.
Yeah, Kumar, actually, it's not a question. I just wanted to also contribute one perspective on the MSME.
Yeah.
Actually, I was told long ago by a senior person that today what you see as Germany's GmbH companies, not the AG ones, which are our publicly listed companies. Many of these GmbHs have grown out of their MSME kind of initiatives, but by no means these are small companies really, and they have, as somebody, I think Mr. Vijay Sardana, I think very well pointed out, they also have solid technology, many of these companies, and they are global level kind of companies, in their own. For some reason, they remained GmbH. So I think in India, we should have a mechanism to see how many of our MSMEs are really breaking this barrier and growing big. I think just as we want poor to be poor and then, do some appeasement politics, I think we want MSME to be MSME all the time, so that some dispensation can be given, etc. I mean, I personally feel, maybe I'm cynical, I personally feel a lot of MSMEs, I think, must be misusing the monies that they get, which will also reflect in their request to say, I will now change my banker and go somewhere else. Sorry if I'm sounding very cynical and very suspicious about these things, but I think we need to have, speaking in a very positive manner, I think we should have a mechanism to see how these MSMEs are contributing really something to the economy and they're growing. I think the point about that China, you must have a compulsory registration and then knowledge has to be shared. I think it's a fantastic mechanism. I think we need to look at the whole MSME policy regime with a fresh set of eyes. I can also tell you, Kumar, that many of my people who are on this call who have worked in corporates will readily agree that this MSME compliance for a large company like us is absolute nightmare. Because they don't even give sometimes updated certificates. We don't know whether it's really MSME or not, but they just give initial.
You're not the first one who's saying it. 4 or 5 people have told me.
It's a nightmare, sir.
Every forum you're saying yes, MSMEs, but they are not come up to the mark and this, yes, that, and such a problem. And
okay, what we'll do is
yes,
the way we
absolutely. I think
Kumar, one last question, if you would permit me.
Sure, yeah.
There is a lot of talk going on about, the whole income tax will be abolished and we should move to an expenditure tax kind of situation. Will that ever happen, or is it like a pipe dream?
No, never. Actually, what's happened is the share of income tax has been coming down. In fact, the share of corporation tax has come down drastically. If you saw among the 3 headings, indirect tax and indirect taxes, income, corporate tax and individual tax. Corporate tax has come down a lot. But I don't think the politics of this country will allow that. Whatever the numbers may say, the politics won't allow it.
Okay. The way we pay our Guru Dakshina is for everybody to come on the screen and clap. Let's do it.
Very brilliant, sir. Brilliant. Excellent.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed this session.
I am also from Bangalore. Where are you in Bangalore?
I'm in Richmond Road.
Oh, Richmond Road. Okay.
We will exchange. I'll get Kumar to, let's meet.
Excellent, sir. Excellent. I'm JP Nair first phase. Definitely.
Okay, sir. Okay. I think it's very nice talking to people about these things, apart from media and all that, individually also. It's nice.
He knew several times in TV, very simple and humble man. Excellent.
Thank
you. The full knowledge.
And Mr. Vijay, thank you so much for
thank you
to come here and share your thoughts. They were all insightful. And I hope we will continue to discuss and take some of these things which you discussed forward.
Thank you so much
for coming. If you permit
me,
I will make a presentation on MSMEs to you.
Sure. I really like to see new ideas, and wherever possible, to meet some minister or something. I feel very happy. Whether something comes out of it or not, I don't know, but just want to push the idea along.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody wants to say anything? Okay.
Thank you.
Otherwise, we'll close it. I will circulate the video by tomorrow. And next week or next to next week, we will have Nilesh Oak, who is also an authority on Indian chronology. He will present a view which is somewhat different from Mr. Vedvi Rarya, which will give you a lot of insights on our real history and chronology. And I hope it helps in continuing our journey to rediscover ourselves and the truth or falsity behind our Puranas, and what is actually true and what is not. And maybe Mr. Vijay also can join now that I know he's also.
Yeah, I'm also very interested, and I do a lot of reading and writing about